I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to a special edition of the St. Paul Forum. I'm glad to be here with you today and hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm expecting a wonderful conversation today. Today's program addresses the question of violence in the world, particularly violence against women. And to bring focus to that is a person who's an expert in experience in education and leadership in Burundi, but who's on a lecture tour right now in this country. My guest today is Parfait Ntahuba. She is one of three female pastors of the Evangelical Friends Church of Burundi. She is a senior pastor in Kamenge Meeting, which has more than 2,500 members, and she's the national coordinator of the Friends Women's Association and the Quaker Peace Network Burundi. Joining us, facilitating this presentation actually, is a leader from our community in the peace work. Brother Mel Duncan is the founding director of advocacy and outreach for Nonviolent Peaceforce US, and which is a world leader in unarmed civilian protection. They've worked and addressed the question of violent conflict, working with local groups to prevent violence in places like South Sudan, Iraq, the Philippines, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. Mel is a graduate of St. Paul's Macalester College, and in 2006 he was honored with the Distinguished Citizen Award. He and his wife, Georgia Heller Duncan, have 8 children and 12 grandchildren. Mel, thank you for being here. Good to see you. It's going to be a great conversation. I want to jump right into the question of gender-based violence, and I want to do that by inviting you, Parfait, to talk about your work as the national coordinator. What is what are these organizations? The Friends Women's Association. What is it? What does it do? What's the mission? And what is the work of the Quaker Peace Network in Burundi?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here today, and my name is Parfait Ntahuba. I'm from Burundi, and I'm pastor from the Evangelical Friends Church and the national coordinator of both the Friends Women's Association and the Quaker Peace Network Burundi. Friends Women's Organization is a woman-led organization which started in 2002. It was in a post-conflict period in Burundi when we had a 12-year civil war. And the Friends Women's Association started to address the unique needs of women. Mm-hmm. HIV/AIDS was the main issue at that time, sexual violence and trauma. And our mission as a Friends Women's Association is to provide a comprehensive community-based health care to women and their families, to promote women's leadership and autonomy, and to strengthen peace and solidarity in Burundi. This is the mission of Friends Women's Association, and we have different programs. We have 2 programs which are related to health care, and the 2 programs which are related to peace building. About health care, the first program is about caring for HIV-positive people. And to respond to our mission, we have a clinic which is called the Nhaseka to offer medical services to our HIV-positive people. And also for the second program, it is called Improving Women's Reproductive Health, where we organize outreach educational sessions to promote or to encourage both men and women, the young people, the importance of to understand the importance of family planning in our context, because today we have overpopulation in Burundi. We have 5.3 kids per woman, which leads to land conflict. And it was even reported that 80% of conflicts in courts in Burundi are land-related. Yeah, this is why Friends Women's Association is involved in family planning, and we have our 2 programs which are related to peace building. The first program is rape survival support, and we started that particular program because we have learned through our HIV positive beneficiaries that some of them were infected with HIV/AIDS through sexual violence. That's why we started this third program. And with this third program, we ran a trauma healing workshop for gender-based violence survivors. And we encourage them to organize themselves into self-help groups as a way to empower them economically, to run income-generating activities together, to attend what we call city business school, because we have understand in our context that most women suffer in their homes because they are at 100 dependent on their husband economically.
100%.
100%,
yeah.
100% dependent on their husband economically. We have another fourth program for community elected leaders and religious leaders as a way to prevent gender-based violence, because we have understood that gender-based violence is also present in our churches. So we want community elected leaders and religious leaders to network, to fight or to stand against the gender-based violence issue in Burundi. About Quaker Peace Network, Friends Women's Association is a member of Quaker Peace Network Burundi. And the Quaker Peace Network Burundi, it is a consortium of 8 organizations, including 2 international organizations and 6 local organizations. Quaker Peace Network Burundi vision is to have a peaceful and prosperous Burundi, because we have experienced the cycles of violence in Burundi, particularly when it comes to elections. That's why you have been doing elections monitoring since 2005. And for the last election, 2020, we used another approach, which is called unarmed civilian protection. And it was the objective was to prevent electoral violence and to promote civilian protection before, during, and after the 2020 elections in Burundi. Thank you.
Well, you've said so much, a lot to unpack. Thank you for the work, first of all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the story, the testimony. Yes. So let me go back and sort of ask you to go deeper, to unpack several things. On the question of sexual violence in Burundi and the question of violence in general in society, frame the culture. Give us a story about the historical culture in Burundi that gives rise to the challenges and the problems the society faces today. What's the background?
I feel maybe I can start my own story about what I have lived, what I have experienced as one from Burundi. Yeah, I was born in a Catholic family, and in that family, there was much violence. There was domestic violence. My mother was often beaten by my father. And I was not feeling well as a child in that family. My mother was a homestay mother. My father had a job. I remember one time my mother had got a job, and every time she was paid at the end of the month, there was fightings at home. And the reason, my mother told me that my father was obliging her when she's paid to bring the whole salary and to give to my father. And then she finally stopped her work. It was not easy. And one period where I remember, there is one period when my mother was sent back to her parents for a period of 6 months.
Sent by by your father or by?
Yes,
okay.
by my father. Actually, my father was, those days, every day, he was beating my mother. And I think that my mother went to her parents to tell them that she was suffering in her home. And I remember one night my father was beating my mother, and then we didn't know if they were hiding, maybe. My grandpa and my uncle and the aunt of my mother, they came at our home and they started to throw stones on our house because they were angry. They were against my father. And I remember people came until my grandpa and the team with him, they went back that night. And the following day, there was a traditional mediation mechanism. They came so that they can mediate between the two families. And what was the final judgment was that my grandpa was fined to give much alcohol to my father, because in our culture it is forbidden to go and attack your son-in-law.
Okay. Okay.
And my grandpa said, I cannot pay anything for someone who wants to kill my daughter. As he refused, then I remember my mother came at home with a team of other women, and my mother took everything from our house, and then she left. Then she stayed with her parents for a period of 6 months. I was 7 years old. We were 5 kids in our family. The first one was 9. The second was 8 years old. And I was 7. The fourth one was 5 years old. And the fifth one was 3 years old. And I know that during that time when my mother was not there, I suffered a lot, because in our context, if the mother is not at home, because I was before me, my elder, I had 2 elder brothers, and I was the third kid, but the firstborn daughter. And in our context, if your mother is not at home, if you are the firstborn daughter, it means that your mother's responsibilities become upon your shoulders. And I was only 7 years old. I had to attend primary school, and I had also to work together with my 2 brothers, particularly the one who was 80 years old, to feed our little sister and my little brother. It was not easy. No. I suffered a lot that time, and that is why, since my childhood, I was against domestic violence.
So let me ask you, how does domestic violence explain itself in your culture in Burundi? What is it that gave your father and other men the understanding that violence against women was okay, doable, because it apparently was in some ways acceptable behavior?
Okay.
Even here, men think that they have a right, that women are property, right? And some men are socialized to believe that if they don't act macho or tough or beat the woman, they're not being a real man. So how does that show up in Burundi culture?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. What I understand is the patriarchal system, when it comes to marriage, the one who's the parents of the son, they have to go and pay a dowry so that their son can get married. If maybe he has a fiance, they go to the parents of the daughter, they pay a dowry for the daughter to be married to their son. So this issue of dowry has been as if a woman is an object that they can manipulate. The issue of dowry and the woman who is there, it is as if they can use the woman the way they want to manipulate, to keep her in the house or to reject him whenever they want. This, I think that this is the main cause, because, and when the wife is married, if you have already left your parents, most of the time, it is as if you no longer have any place, because we don't have the inheritance rights. You know what I mean? It means that if you are married, if you have many problems or you are experiencing violence in your home, it is hard to go back to your parents because of the land problems. Your brothers, you can go there for 1 month, for 2 months, but if they see that you came without going back to your husband, your brothers start to fight against you because they feel as if you are going to inherit with them.
To take their rights.
Yes.
To take their inheritance.
Yes.
Right, okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing. Let me bring you in here, brother Mel. You know, you have witnessed and watched and worked against violence in societies around the world. When you hear this story, what resonates with you? And how do you contextualize the personal story, the societal story that frames that story, but also your awareness of the question of abuse, gender-based abuse, and broadly, abuse between and among human beings?
Well, the way that we approach violence is that it's a whole. And our work is when we are invited by local communities into war zones. And our purpose is to work with local communities in keeping civilians safe during violent conflicts. And so, as you mentioned, we're in Iraq. We have a team in Ukraine right now. We have a team in Sudan, you know, where there's been a reemergence of a war. But what we found is that that type of violence, often known as war or violent conflict, is intimately based to gender-based violence, that it's all part of the same thing, and that you have to address violence on all levels, that you can't just ignore one part of violence without the other. And so the type of work that Parfait's describing in terms of intervening and preventing gender-based violence is intimately related to the broader-based kind of violence that people experience in communities and in countries.
Pastor Parfait, let me ask you to give us sort of a primer on Burundi, like Burundi 101. Tell us about the country and the culture. You mentioned that it's experiencing overpopulation, and you mentioned that a woman or household has 5.2 children, and that is not sustainable for the family or for women. Tell me more about the Burundi society, the political structure. I know Burundi was a kingdom or is a kingdom, and you talked about elections. How does that work? The traditional systems of governance versus the modern political arrangements out of which elections take place.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me first explain about the overpopulation, as you were asking me. The overpopulation, Burundi is a very small country with 27,834 square kilometers, with a population of around 12 million, meaning we have an average of 450 people per square kilometer. And now we have overpopulation because we have the issue of polygamy, which is also related, which is also deepening the issue of gender-based violence. We have religious beliefs, people who think that we need to have many children. Yeah, and that if you adhere to family planning methods, it is a sin. This is causing the overpopulation in Burundi. And if I come to our country, before about what has been happening in our country, before 1993, in order someone to go on power, the coup d'etat system was used in Burundi. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was since 1962 to 1993. And in 1993, the system changed. The first president was elected democratically in 1993. And then he was killed after only 3 months. Then there was the beginning of the 12th civil war in Burundi between two main ethnic groups, because in Burundi we have 3 main ethnic groups, the Hutus, the Tutsis, and the Batwa ethnic group. The 2 main ethnic groups who were fighting since 1993 for a period of 12 years, they were Tutsis and the Hutus.
As in Rwanda?
Yes.
Same conflict?
Yes. Yeah, they were fighting after the death of the first president who was elected democratically. And it was that time that my father was also killed, because the first president was killed on October 21st, and my father was killed on November 30, 1993. Yeah.
How was he killed? And was it political, or what happened?
Yeah, he was an active member of the president who was the ruling party, the president who was killed. Mm-hmm. And then he was killed, we were told he was killed by stones because we didn't bury him. We didn't see his body. Yeah. And it was...
You were told he was killed by who?
Stones.
His own son? Oh, stoned
Yeah,
to death.
for
Stoned to death, okay.
Yeah,
Stoned, okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then we didn't bury him. We didn't see his body, but this is how my father died. For me, I feel that is why today I'm involved in gender-based violence prevention, because I was against gender-based violence since my childhood, because I know how much I suffered in my family. Another thing is that today I feel that I need to do violence prevention when it comes to elections, because my father, it is true that he was abusive, he was beating my mother, but he was working for us to go to school. Mm. He was working for us to get food. And when he was killed, that I was not able to see his dead body, it traumatized me. And that is why today I feel that I need to do my best to prevent electoral violence, because I know that it has impacted my life. Yeah.
So, Mel, weigh in. As you listen, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've been able to work with Parfait since 2018, and I've observed the incredible work that she's done and that she's led in Burundi. In 2015, there was substantial violence, and people were killed, and over 300,000 people fled. And after that, at the time I was working at the United Nations on behalf of Nonviolent Peaceforce, and the people at the UN were saying this has all the ingredients of Rwanda, and they were worried about mass atrocities, and people were looking at at how to prevent this. The Security Council could not find ways. And Parfait emerged as a leader, and through her leadership and her organizing was able to lead an approach to violence prevention with volunteers around the country, focusing on the areas that had experienced the most violence in 2015, and led an effort that substantially reduced violence in 2020 to the point that there was no one who had to flee their homes. And so we hear the headlines about atrocities and mass killings, whether in this country or others, but we don't hear the headlines of when they're prevented. And if we did hear those headlines, Parfait would be the headline. And her work has been so substantial that it really needs to be held up.
So this is a teaching. It really is a teaching and a doing. A doing with the intent of teaching and sharing, giving people the tools to attain peace and cooperation and sustainability in their lives without violence, right? Preventing violence. Tell me, Pastor, how you organized in your own mind to begin the work. What were the first steps in your mission to address on a either local or individual or large scale the question of violence against women, gender-based violence?
I got an opportunity to do peace studies at Selkirk College in Canada. And it was during the crisis in Burundi because of the 2015 elections. I was there for an intensive training for 4 months. And then I came back to Burundi. It was at the end of December 2015. And it was since that time that I got connected to people who are involved in peacemaking, and I learned about unarmed civilian protection, and which was already being done by some of my teachers at Selkirk College in Canada.
Which college is it?
Selkirk College,
okay,
in Castlegar, British Columbia,
okay,
in Canada.
And then you called the training unarmed civilian. What was the phrase you used?
Yes.
We'll say the phrase again that you used. You described it, training in unarmed civilian protection. Is that what it was? What did you say?
I did first a training of peace studies. Mm-hmm. And then I learned that they also organized, they were preparing to organize a training on unarmed civilian protection.
That's the phrase, okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I went back to Burundi at the end of December 2015. And in 2017, Selkirk College organized a training on unarmed civilian protection. And I benefit from that training. The first part was online for 3 months, and then we had the face-to-face training for 2 weeks. It was in 2017, from January to March, we had an online training, and in May, we had a face-to-face part training at the Castlegar, at Selkirk College in Castlegar, British Columbia, in Canada.
So how does that training work? What happens? You get up in the morning, you go to a classroom. What happens? What does the training consist of?
Yeah, the training was about the principles, the strategies, and some of the activities of unarmed civilian protection. Actually, unarmed civilian protection, it is an approach that we use in order to prevent violence or to mitigate the impact of violence in areas where we have conflicts.
What are the principles?
Yeah, the principles of unarmed civilian protection are nonviolence, This is the first principle. The second is non-partisanship. The third principle is the primacy of local actors. We have the fourth principle, which is independence, and the fifth principle, which is the respect of human rights.
What are the strategies?
Yeah, the strategies we have, the relationship building. Relationship building is very key for unarmed civilian protection. We have a capacity enhancement or recognition, and we have monitoring. We have another strategy is relationship building. Let me go back. Relationship building. We have monitoring. We have capacity enhancement, and we have proactive engagement.
I'm Al McFarlane, pleased to be in conversation with Pastor Parfait Ntahuba, who is one of 3 female pastors of the Evangelical Friends Church of Burundi. She's also senior pastor in Kamenge meeting, which has more than 2,500 members. She's the national coordinator of the Friends Women's Association in Burundi, also the Quaker Peace Network Burundi, and we're talking about her work in violence prevention in addressing gender-based violence. Also here, our friend Mel Duncan, who has done a tremendous amount of work, particularly through his co-founding of the Nonviolent Peaceforce US. Thank you for both being here. I want to get back to the question of how we have succeeded, how you've succeeded in reducing the amount of violence from the days of 2015, while there was conflict abroad, to where it's had a substantial and appreciable decline. Talk about what happened over the years after you went into the work, and who went into the work with you. I'm sure that you will tell me that you didn't do this alone, that there was a community involved. What was the process for having tangible, measurable results for you in your work?
Okay, thank you very much. After I did my UCP training on armed civilian protection in 2017, in 2018, I got an opportunity in March 2018 to get connected to Mel Duncan. We met at the UN, we were attending the UN 62nd Commission on the Status of Women in New York. And then I got an opportunity to be connected to Mel Duncan, who is now the founding director of Nonviolent Peaceforce. And I was excited to meet with him because at Selke College, when we were doing a UCP training, they gave us a list of organizations who are already practicing the UCP skills, and they mentioned they included the Nonviolent Peaceforce. Mm-hmm. And then we get connected because I was thinking, how can we apply these skills to prevent electoral violence for the coming 2020 elections? Mm. Yeah, it was in that way that when we talked with this special man, Mel Duncan, that we then met at a workshop in Nairobi, Kenya, a workshop which was organized by Nonviolent Peaceforce in November 2018. And when I heard what they were doing in South Sudan, I thought to myself that I cannot do this work alone because I was the only person who was already trained on UCP from Burundi. That's why I started to contact the people from Selke College, and then they supported Quaker Peace Network Burundi to train 20 people on UCP. And then they sent someone from Selke College to come to Burundi in May 2019 to train 20 people from Quaker Peace Network Burundi. And when they heard about this, they said, yeah, we need these skills to prevent violence for the next elections. It was in that way that in November 2019, a delegation from KPN Burundi was sent to South Sudan under the leadership of Mel Duncan, we met with him in South Sudan. We went together. We met in Nairobi and we went together in South Sudan. And because we went in a different missions office of NP, we went. One team went in Bentiu, another team went in Mondri, and when we came back in Juba, we had the training from NP, Nonviolent Peaceforce expert. And it was since that time that we developed together a proposal that will fit in our context for the 2020 elections so that we can prevent violence. And it was then under the support of Nonviolent Peaceforce that we were able to implement that particular project in 5 different communities of Burundi, 5 communities which had experienced more violence in the 2015 elections. And our entry point was to organize trauma healing workshops for 125 people from the 5 different communities, meaning 25 people per community. Sure. They came to attend a 3-day trauma healing workshops, and the participants were coming. They were young people, both men and women. They were coming from different political parties. And participants also include those who are already peace actors in their different communities. And they came together through a trauma healing workshop, and when they started through our trauma healing workshop, because on the second day we listened to people what happened to them in the past, because it was related to elections. People shared their sad stories, and they started to cry together. And it was after they cried together that they understood that finally we are one person. We have the same emotions. We need to prevent violence in our different communities, and we needed to do it by ourselves because they have understood that no one will come and bring peace in their communities. This was the beginning. And then after each trauma healing workshop, after a 3-day trauma healing workshop, we were asking people to choose 5 people who will represent them, who will be their leaders. And it was those 5 people who were invited to attend.
5 out of the 25 from each of those 5 communities, right?
Yes, a total was 25. It was 5 per community. A total of 25 were invited to attend a 3-day training on early warning, early response. This is one activity of UCP, early warning, early response team. They came to study about it. After 3 days, they went back. The 5 people went back in the community to train the remaining 20 people on early warning, early response. And the KPN Burundi had to do accompaniment for them to send one person who was recently trained by a Nonviolent Peaceforce on early warning, early response, to go to work with the 5 people to train the 20 remaining people in the different communities. It was in that way that we established the 5 early warning, early response teams in 5 different communities, which had experienced the high rate of violence in the previous elections, on the 2015 elections.
So what is early warning, early prevention? What does that mean exactly? What is an early warning? And then what is the consequential early response?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, early warning is about first to observe and to listen, to use different strategies to collect information in your community. To collect, it is information collection. And if, for instance, you see that there is potential violence, you prepare those people.
What are the signs? What are the signs of potential violence in the community?
Yeah.
Just give me an idea of what this person who's trained to observe, what does she or he see that will tell them that there's something that I should warn, or this is a warning? What is it?
Yeah, in a context, for instance, in the context of elections, some signs are the rumors, and other signs we can have. We can have rumors. We can have hate speech. When people are doing electoral campaign, hate speech. You can see some people who start to flee, to go in to leave their communities. These are some of the signs. You can find some people. Maybe you can find some people who have been killed or who have been disappearance. People who disappear. These are some the signs that they might do.
And early solutions would be what? What do you when you observe the signs? What are you motivated? What are you trained to do as an early response?
Yes, thank you very much. If, for instance, there are some rumors that some people might be killed or might be arrested, the UCP practitioners are trained that they need first to verify if the information is true. You cannot believe that an information is true if it is not verified. They must go on the ground or to work with the local people who are there in the community to verify if the information is true. And if the information is true, the UCP practitioners, they have to contact the local administration because they must build a relationship with both the administration, with the security forces, so that those people can intervene if it is necessary. Yeah, this is how the UCP is working. When you verify an information, so that is why as a Quaker Peace Network, in our IWI teams, early warning, early response to work well, we had what we call a calling center. They were using an SMS system. If you have some information, you send it to the Quaker Peace Network calling center, so that they can coach you what to do, or even contact the local administration to do something before the violence escalation. Yes.
You give the example about the man who was feeling threatened
Yes.
and was about to flee, and what the team did.
Yes, thank you very much. I can give an example because among the signs, the indicators of violence that some people can flee, run away from their homes, we had one guy who was afraid. He was from the main opposition political party in Bubanza, and he felt threatened. He started to say that he wanted to run away from home, to flee from home, because he felt as if he might be killed. And our early warning, early response team in Bubanza, they started to go to visit him in the morning, to be together with him. They had also to send another team to go to be with him in the afternoon, even the evening. And then the man who was afraid who was feeling that he need to run away or to flee away from home, he stayed there because of those people who were there for him, for the protective. This was protective presence, to be together with him. Yeah, there was even another man from.
So to not feel isolated.
Yes.
To not feel like you're alone. You're even more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because you have no connection.
Yeah.
And so the unarmed engagement is to confirm and affirm that we are with you and that we are all here together.
Yes.
And that our presence supports your stability and your sense of safety, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It reduces the tension. And I really get the idea of addressing rumors, because rumors in areas of conflict, and particularly ethnic conflict, they start and everything goes quickly. And verifying, things are real things happen, but lots of times what the story comes back as is 10 times greater than what the actual incident was. And at any level that you can intervene, you reduce the capacity for explosion. And explosion is blind violence blind reaction, and unnecessary pain and hurt and trauma. That's what I think. I don't know. Am I saying it properly? Is that a proper description of the cycle?
Yeah, if there is rumors, we need to verify it. And if, for instance, it is already, there is a rumor and that it is, people are trying to ask to inform the different institutions, it is a way to de-escalate the potential violence. Because if it was prepared, and that those who are preparing the coup know that it is already known, they will not be violent as they were prepared.
How will the world be different if you can empower women to be both self-reliant and aware of their ability to be self-reliant?
What we do women's economic empowerment so that they can be independent economically to prevent gender-based violence, but at the same time, we engage men to work together with women to stand against gender-based violence. What we do, we identify men who have changed their behaviors, role models, and they are among people that we call gender-based violence survivors accompanists. We have both men and women. Those men who are role models nowadays are working together with women so that they can network to stand against gender-based violence in their different communities. This is what you are doing. Because we believe that if men are not, if they are left behind, if they are not networking with women, we feel that the issue of gender-based violence will not, not end.
Mel, what do you think about the question, and how do you put this in a global context? How does it show up? You and I may have a common friend. I did some interviews with one of the leaders of SPLA, Dr. Riek Machar from South Sudan. I've done several interviews with him. But, my interviews with him, what I remember mostly about his conversations with me was the devastating concern he had about the fact that he and Dr. John Garang, when they left Khartoum and went into the bush to wage the war, that war that they led consumed 5 million lives.
That's right.
And he talked with regret about the cost in human life, but he also talked with regret about how to, not regret, but with hope and regret, with the need to move from a war footing, a war economy, war posture, a violence posture, particularly to get children back to being children again, because his organization had employed child soldiers, as had the enemies as well. So how do you move a society from where you've trained teenagers to be killers to letting teenagers be children and be life givers and not killers? What do you think? And that's the violence question in general, broadly.
Yeah, it's interesting, Al, that you would bring up Riek Machar, because he's still one of the main combatant forces in South Sudan. He is now, under the peace agreement, vice president, and his main rival, Salva Kiir, is the president. And the conflict goes on. In fact, Pope Francis brought both of them to Rome and got down on his knees and kissed both of their feet, beseeching them to bring peace. And I think what we see is, whether you're in Sudan or South Sudan or Ukraine or Russia, you see men carrying out, usually old men, carrying out these fights among each other. Seldom do you see two women in those positions carrying out these wars. First of all, we recognize that our nature is primarily nonviolent. we wouldn't be able to drive on Interstate 94 if we weren't primarily nonviolent. You know, if we didn't rein in our impulses, we'd be crashing and
Chaos.
and chaos. And so we already have that. We can build on that. We have other impulses, but we're primarily a nonviolent species, or we wouldn't have gotten this far, for better or for worse. When we are working in conflict zones, we always look to who are the real leaders in the communities, because we don't start up here. We don't start at the, who are the big men. We start at the community level, because that's where real peace is made. And we listen, find out who are the people that get things done. Almost always that's women. So, for example, in South Sudan, since you brought up Dr. Mashar, we have worked with and trained now 60 women's protection teams throughout the country. And I was just there in late February and meeting with some of those women. And they are now at the place where they are, you mentioned child soldiers, where they are protecting children from being abducted as soldiers, where they are doing so much as going to the camps and demanding those kids back. And when they are confronting local commanders, they will get those kids back. They are accompanying women and preventing them from being raped when the women are collecting firewood, for example, and accompanying women to get the services they need if they are assaulted. And so they are taking on very different roles and more visible roles. And as I listened to one of the teams, Parfait mentioned Bentu, which, you went to Bentu, right? Oh, you went to Mundri, okay. One of the teams in Bentu was telling me now that they're doing training with women about telling that they can tell their husbands no. And that is revolutionary in a culture where they were treated as property. Mm-hmm. And as I sat there listening to them, which the more I learned, the more I learned to be quiet and listen. I thought, this is revolutionary. The toothpaste is out of the tube. And our work is to support the leaders at the grassroots who are doing the peace building and to support them as they move up. Mm-hmm. Not to work up here, right, but to support here. And that's usually the women who are doing the work on the community level.
For me, I think that we need to train children from their early ages, mm-hmm, so that they can understand that they need to prevent gender-based violence together, mm-hmm, at the family level. As parents, I have seen that here in the US, maybe it is it is good preparing to us in Africa, because you raise kids, both sons and daughters, in the same way. Mm-hmm. Teach them to work, to do the work in the family, to be in the kitchen, to clean the house. So if the children are educated in that way, they can grow with a spirit of a spirit without gender-based violence. And also, at the same time, if in schools, when we can have some hours to speak about the issue of gender-based violence, so that kids can grow with that mentality of non-violence, peace education in schools, and then to have those role models who are ready to promote, to continue to educate, because some people are resistant. They don't want to change their culture. Because, here I have seen that both men and the women can do the housework. So, yeah, but it is different in our context because it seems that to go in the kitchen, to clean in the house, it is for only for women. Yeah, so educating the children since they are early age to consider them in the same way at home, and also to promote peace education in schools since primary, even elementary. It can help bring change, significant change.
So let me ask you, I'll wrap up with this one question here about history, cultural history, say, in the Hutu community or even in the Tutsi community. Where in the Hutu creation story is there equality? Is the original conceptualization of the peoplehood of the Hutu people one that establishes primacy for the man, or does it acknowledge shared power and humanity for all of its members?
I think that in the past, men have been, because of our patriarchal system, men have been dominating. They have been overruling. They have been given a place to rule over women. That is why this issue of gender-based violence, I was saying that it is deepened in our culture. But today, if we can look how far we came from, we have hope that things will change. Because in the past years, for instance, in Burundi, there was some time when if you get married, you had to stop your job and to be a homestay mother. Women were not allowed to have a passport. Before 1993, Burundian women were not allowed to have passports so that they can travel outside the country. But today we have international passports. Yeah, women were not allowed to have some political positions. But today we have 30% of women who can occupy political positions. So in the past, I could not come here in the US and be here for 1 month. I don't think that I could even have that right to move from our country. So if we look back for how far we came from, we have hope that things will change, because things have started to change. And also, if we continue with that peace education for children and the younger people, it will promote that spirit of nonviolence in our different communities.
If people here listening to this want to find out more about your organization and your work, or support it in some way, how do they do that? Is there a website that you can give us that people can go to express interest and support?
Okay, thank you very much. If you want to support the work you are doing, we have a website. If you want to support the Quaker Peace Network Burundi, you can support the Quaker Peace Network Burundi through Nonviolent Peaceforce. They have website and how to donate. If you wanted to support the Friends Women's Association, you can also donate through the Friends Peace Teams. It is here in the US.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with Pastor Parfait Ntahuba and also our colleague Mel Duncan. Thank you so very much for this conversation. Continued success in your important work in the world. Thank you so much. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.